Sunlight filtered through the worn curtains of Marcus Hayes' tiny apartment. The 35-year-old black single dad woke instantly to the gentle clatter of ceramics from his kitchen. Marcus bolted upright, his heart pounding, and instantly froze. Standing in the light was a stunning woman whose expensive clothes were gone. She wore only his faded black t-shirt. Her eyes, usually cold, were now profoundly weary. "Marcus, I'm sorry, I can't go home." He went rigid. He had never met her, yet instantly knew the truth. She was the CEO of the city's largest investment firm. Marcus Hayes, 35 years old, was a man defined by two things: exhaustion and devotion. He was a single father, a black man who wrestled with two grueling jobs, a graveyard shift security guard until 2 a.m., and a daytime delivery driver, all to provide for his 6-year-old daughter, Ava. Ava was Marcus's world, bright, quick-witted, and possessing a smile that felt like the only sunshine his difficult life ever saw. Marcus's days were a blurred, relentless cycle. He'd clock out as the sun was still down, grab 4 hours of sleep, wake up at 6 a.m. to get Ava ready for school, and spend his afternoons running deliveries just to make the monthly rent. Despite their poverty, the small, cramped apartment was always a haven of warmth and order. Ava's brightly colored crayon drawings covered the fridge. The hand-washed blankets still carried the comforting scent of simple soap. The neighbors, often whispering, all agreed, "That black dad is poor, but he is decent. A good man." One brutally cold evening, after a particularly draining security shift, Marcus saw a woman crumpled on the icy steps of his old apartment building. She was dressed in couture, yet she shivered violently. One high heel snapped clean off, her eyes red-rimmed and vacant. Marcus approached cautiously, instinctively lowering his imposing frame. "Ma'am," he asked gently, his voice rough from lack of sleep, "do you need help?" She shook her head in a silent, panicked refusal. Then, without warning, she collapsed into a faint. Marcus didn't hesitate. He carefully scooped her frail body into his arms and carried her up the 3 flights of stairs. He gently laid her on his tiny sofa, covered her with Ava's thickest, softest blanket, and moved the furniture to give her space. He didn't know who she was, only that she was a human being in deep distress. He stayed awake in the armchair, silently watching over her, unwilling to leave a vulnerable stranger alone and unguarded through the dark hours. His own exhaustion finally overtook him, and he drifted into a shallow, protective sleep. This was the reason he woke up to find her in his shirt. The silence was broken by the sound of pattering feet. Ava, 6 years old and radiating energy, skipped into the room. "Daddy, who is that? She's so pretty." Evelyn, still recovering from her shock, jumped slightly at the child's voice. Her immediate reaction wasn't fear or corporate reserve. It was a deep, unexpected wave of sadness. She looked at Ava, her voice softening, losing its corporate edge. "Thank you, sweetheart. You have very kind eyes." Ava, entirely unfazed by the stranger, asked plainly, "Did you sleep at my house?" Evelyn flushed, a rare wave of heat rising to her cheeks. I guess I did." Marcus watched them, a knot of confusion tightening in his stomach, sensing the profound trouble surrounding this beautiful, strange woman. Evelyn, in turn, looked around the small, worn, yet deeply warm apartment. Her eyes trembled. This was the quiet, genuine peace she had never, ever known. The neighbor, old Mr. Johnson, tapped lightly on the doorframe, peering past Marcus. "That young lady was sitting outside for a long time last night, Marcus. You did the right thing bringing her in. She looked like she was running from the whole world." Evelyn was not here by chance. Her life was imploding. She sat down at the small kitchen table, her hands clutching the mug of water, her knuckles white. Marcus stood opposite her, waiting patiently. "Marcus, I can't go home," she repeated, her voice barely a whisper. She finally looked up, her gaze raw. "My husband. He isn't safe." Marcus's initial confusion hardened into immediate, protective concern. "Are you saying you're being abused?" Evelyn simply held his gaze, her silence speaking the truth far clearer than any words could. She was Evelyn Carter, the youngest CEO in Carter Investments history, celebrated for her ice-cold composure and ruthless corporate strategy. But few knew that behind the glittering facade was a highly toxic marriage to a man of equally immense but deeply controlling power. The previous night, a terrible argument had escalated violently. Cornered and terrified, her heel snapped as she made her desperate escape. Her husband had smashed her phone, ensuring she couldn't call for help or coordinate her next move. Evelyn ran aimlessly, fueled only by terror, until she collapsed outside Marcus's door, the last, safest-looking haven she could find. Marcus clenched his fists, the protective instinct overriding his exhaustion. "You are safe here," he stated, his voice a low, unwavering promise. Ava, sensing the tension, quietly brought her favorite stuffed bear to Evelyn. "Here, Miss Evelyn," the little girl offered sincerely. "Hold this bear if you're scared." Evelyn choked back a sob, pulling the bear close. It had been years, decades perhaps, since anyone had offered her simple, unconditional kindness. This tiny gesture broke the impenetrable shell of the CEO, but the real crisis was escalating. News channels were running her face as a missing person. The Carter Investments Board was holding emergency meetings, fearing a stock collapse. And her husband, Adrian, a man who saw her as a possession, had already activated his private security detail, hunting her down like prey. Evelyn leaned forward, the fear returning to her eyes. "I just need a place to breathe. Just one more day, Marcus. Just until I figure out a legal move." Marcus nodded slowly, his mind already calculating the risk. "Stay as long as you need to. We'll figure it out." They spent the day together, an impossible trio. Evelyn helped Ava with her drawing, surprised by the simple, profound joy of domesticity. She watched Marcus move around the apartment, fixing a squeaky cabinet hinge, then saw him quietly kneel on the floor, repairing Ava's old study desk with a single worn screwdriver and a handful of salvaged screws. "My daddy can fix anything," Ava announced proudly, hugging his neck. Evelyn watched Marcus, a wave of respect washing over her, a feeling far deeper than the admiration she felt for corporate power. This man, with nothing but his hands and his love for his daughter, was the most truly competent person she had ever met. That night, after Ava fell asleep, nestled safely between them on the small sofa, Evelyn found the courage to speak the truth. "I have money, influence, power, but in my own home, I was always terrified. I felt worthless." Marcus wrapped his arm around her shoulders instinctively, a gesture that felt both gentle and solid. "I have next to nothing," he responded softly. "I work until I drop. But Ava is my whole world, and in this apartment, I'm the king, and my kingdom is safe." Evelyn turned and looked at him for a long, silent moment. She saw the unwavering character beneath the tired eyes. For the first time in her life, she trusted a man entirely. The following morning, the media frenzy reached a fever pitch. A dozen reporters had gathered near the entrance of her luxury high-rise, demanding answers from Adrian. Evelyn watched the coverage on Marcus's old fuzzy television set, the sight of her own meticulously constructed corporate image now crumbling on screen. She gripped the worn arm of the sofa, her breathing shallowing. "It's everywhere," she whispered, her voice cracking. "The board, Adrian, they'll use this. They'll say I'm unstable, that I've had a breakdown." As the pressure mounted, Evelyn suddenly curled in on herself, burying her face in her hands. She was hyperventilating, a full-blown panic attack, the result of years of suppressed fear finally erupting in the safety of Marcus's home. The powerful CEO was reduced to a shaking, terrified woman. Marcus acted immediately. He didn't ask questions. He didn't try to reason. He simply sat beside her, gently placing a warm, heavy hand on her shoulder. He started speaking in a low, rhythmic monotone, entirely unrelated to the crisis. "5 things you can see, Evelyn. Tell me 5 things you can see in this room. Focus on the cracks in the ceiling. Count the lines." He continued, guiding her through a grounded breathing exercise, a technique he had learned years ago to cope with the trauma of his own loss. He kept her anchored, forcing her mind back from the corporate terror to the simple physical reality of the small room. Slowly, Evelyn's shaking subsided. She leaned her head against his chest, listening to the deep, steady rhythm of his heart. How? How did you know to do that? She finally asked, her voice thick. Marcus looked away towards the window. When you've watched a life you love disappear because of a cold, heartless system, you learn how to hold on to the things that are real. Fear is a corporate illusion, Evelyn. This, he squeezed her shoulder gently, this is real. Evelyn realized the profound truth of the man next to her. She had built her empire on fear. Fear of failure, fear of poverty, fear of her husband. Marcus had built his life on love, and he commanded his world with a quiet, unshakable dignity that no corporate title could ever match. She was an executive who commanded markets. He was a man who commanded calm. Little Ella, who lived across the hall, whispered to Ava in the elevator later that day, "Is that lady staying with you? She looks like someone who is finding a safe place for the very first time." The fragile peace shattered the next morning with two explosive twists. Two fundamental truths that redefined everything Evelyn thought she knew about Marcus Hayes. Marcus left early to grab breakfast supplies, leaving Evelyn and Ava alone. While helping Ava tidy up, Evelyn accidentally knocked over an old, dusty storage box tucked under Marcus's desk. The contents spilled onto the floor, a bundle of documents and photographs that didn't fit the narrative of a struggling delivery driver. She picked up a framed certificate, Chief Technology Officer, Hayes Robotics, in recognition of visionary leadership. Another photo showed Marcus, impossibly younger and sharper, in a bespoke suit, shaking hands with the city mayor at a major technology convention 8 years ago. She found his old business card. Dr. Marcus Hayes, Ph.D. Engineering. The sheer weight of the lie, or rather the sacrifice, nearly buckled her knees. Evelyn gasped, dropping the papers. He was, the CTO of a leading tech firm? The realization hit her with the force of a physical blow. The tired man who fixed furniture and drove shipments was, in fact, a technological genius. She quickly sifted through the documents, finding patent applications. They weren't for mundane software. They were for advanced robotic surgical assistance systems, cutting-edge medical technology designed to save lives with unprecedented precision. He had created tools that could redefine medicine. He was a world-class inventor. Marcus returned, seeing her holding the files, and his face instantly clouded with old pain. He sighed, placing the grocery bag down. "That was me," he admitted, his voice raw. "I was the CTO. I built the entire research division from the ground up, hoping to make medicine affordable." He paused, the memory choking him. "But when my wife fell ill, the hospital refused to treat her without the full upfront payment. We didn't have it." He swallowed hard. "She died because the system I helped build, the very one relying on my patents, valued profit over human life. She died right in front of the technology that could have saved her." Marcus's eyes, usually tired, now burned with a fierce, controlled fire. "I walked away from everything. I sold every asset, every share, every patent related to that system. I swore I would never again prioritize abstract success over the tangible needs of my daughter. I vowed that Ava would never be left wanting again, even if it meant doing manual labor for the rest of my life. I needed cash in hand, not stock options. I needed a life where Ava knew my face, not my quarterly reports." Evelyn was stunned into silence. This single father, who had endured such hardship, wasn't just poor. He had chosen poverty and grueling, back-breaking work as an act of profound protective devotion. The man standing before her, a tired, humble, protective single dad, was a brilliant, self-sacrificing technology titan who had rejected an entire industry on principle. His delivery van was a testament to his moral code. "You gave up everything," Evelyn whispered, tears welling up as she realized the depth of his character. "You traded a multi-million-dollar life for her safety." "I traded the illusion of power for real power," Marcus corrected her, a faint, sad smile touching his lips. "The power to be here, to be present." That afternoon, as Marcus and Ava returned from school, a sleek, black luxury sedan, the kind that screamed corporate intimidation, screeched to a halt outside the apartment block. Adrian, Evelyn's husband, exploded from the driver's side, his expensive suit immaculate, his face twisted with furious possessiveness. He had tracked her phone's last known location and then paid off a local private investigator. He strode past the neighbors and barged through the unlocked door, his eyes immediately settling on Evelyn. You ran to the apartment of a poor black man? A delivery boy? He sneered, his voice laced with cold contempt. Did you think I wouldn't find you, Evelyn? Get your coat. We're leaving now. Marcus immediately stepped forward, placing his body squarely between Adrian and Evelyn. He didn't raise his voice. He simply stood like an unmovable wall. You need to step back. This woman is staying here. Adrian roared with cold, dismissive laughter. Who the hell do you think you are? A rent-a-cop and a package mule? You think your measly $1,000 rent receipt gives you any jurisdiction here? I own the building your bank is housed in. I'll have your delivery license revoked by nightfall, and you'll be sleeping under a bridge with your little cargo. Evelyn trembled, but when Ava rushed to cling to Marcus's leg, something snapped inside the CEO. She pushed past Marcus and stood inches from Adrian, her eyes finally blazing with genuine fire. I am not going back, Adrian. I filed papers with my attorney this morning. You do not own me, and you have no right to touch them. Adrian, his ego shattered by her defiance, completely lost control. His fury was visceral. He flung a vicious, amateurish punch aimed at Marcus's head. But Marcus didn't react with rage. He reacted with precision. His body moved faster than Adrian could register. He didn't block. He intercepted. He caught Adrian's forearm, not with force, but with the specific pressure point grip of someone who understands human kinetics and leverage. The same cerebral skill that designed complex robotics. He twisted Adrian's arm slightly and expertly, applying agonizing pressure to the median nerve cluster. And Adrian instantly crumpled to the floor, howling in shock and pain, his attack failing before it even began. Marcus stood over him, breathing evenly. His expression was utterly neutral, the calm aftermath of a successful calculation. His voice was quiet, utterly devoid of volume, yet colder and harder than steel. Never, ever, lay a hand on a woman, he warned, his eyes holding Adrian's. And especially not in front of my daughter. I understand leverage, Adrian. I know exactly how to apply pressure to force a decision. Do you understand what I'm telling you? The neighbors, having been drawn out by the shouting, gasped in shock. They had seen the arrogant millionaire attack the poor delivery driver, and they had seen the delivery driver drop the millionaire like a sack of garbage without even breaking a sweat. Adrian, humiliated, defeated, and momentarily paralyzed by the pain, scrambled back, his expensive clothes scuffed and dusty. He staggered to his car, but not without delivering a final, venomous threat. This isn't over, Hayes. I will end you. You will regret protecting her. Evelyn rushed back into Marcus's arms, tears streaming down her face. Marcus, I am so sorry for this. He simply held her, gently stroking her hair. He isn't your fault, Evelyn. You're safe. That's what matters. Ava looked up at the two of them, the beautiful woman and her strong daddy, and smiled slightly, as if the perfect family portrait had just been completed. Old Mr. Johnson watched Adrian speed away, then turned to his wife. I've seen a lot of men in this neighborhood, but that boy Marcus, he's the kind of man a woman chooses to trust, not the kind she runs from. He just showed that millionaire what real power looks like. The confrontation marked a profound turning point. Evelyn, bruised but unbroken, sought and secured a temporary leave of absence from the Carter Investments Board, leveraging her legal team to establish a formal separation from Adrian. For the next week, she committed fully to her new life in the small, warm apartment. The contrast was stark, yet deeply healing. The woman who once flew private jets now rode shotgun in a dented delivery van, helping Marcus navigate back alleys and hand-deliver packages. She learned to cook, badly at first, filling the tiny kitchen with smoke, much to Marcus's amused exasperation. She listened, truly listened, as Ava recounted the dramas of first grade. She taught Ava simple French phrases and helped her with art projects, marveling at the child's boundless energy. She noticed the small things, the way Marcus meticulously organized his tools, a habit that spoke volumes about his engineering background. The way he budgeted every dollar, not out of greed, but out of a deep protective necessity. One afternoon, Evelyn sat down with Marcus and wrote a check. It was a substantial amount, enough to cover his rent for a year and upgrade his failing delivery vehicle. She slid it across the kitchen table. "Marcus," she said quietly, "you saved me. Let me pay you back. Let me put a down payment on a house for you and Ava. You deserve it." Marcus didn't touch the check. He didn't even look at the amount. He gently pushed it back towards her. "Evelyn," he said, his voice firm but kind, "I don't need your money. I make my own way. I fixed that squeaky cabinet, not for profit, but because it needed fixing. I protected you not for a bonus, but because it was the right thing to do. You don't pay for safety, and you don't pay for respect. My value is not dictated by your balance sheet. It's dictated by my oath to Ava." Evelyn's eyes welled up. This was the moment she understood his core value. Her entire life had been transactional. Everything had a price. Marcus's love, his protection, and his character were the only things she had ever encountered that were truly priceless. She tore up the check. She began to smile openly, not the practiced executive curve of her lips, but a genuine, radiant smile. She started sleeping through the night without the crushing anxiety that had plagued her for years. "Miss Evelyn," Ava asked one afternoon, her question startling in its simplicity. "Do you want to be my new mommy?" Evelyn choked, tears instantly blurring her vision. She pulled Ava into a tight, fierce hug. I will try very hard to be worthy, little one. I promise." One quiet evening, she stood by the window, watching Marcus teach Ava how to change a flat tire on his delivery van, a vital, practical life lesson. She turned to him, her voice filled with a profound, grateful wonder. "Here, Marcus. I feel like I can finally breathe. I feel like me again. I feel safe." Marcus stood beside her, his shoulder brushing hers, the connection between them now palpable. "That," he murmured, his gaze resting on her, "is exactly what a home is supposed to give a person. Not marble floors, but firm ground." Their bond deepened quickly, forged not by romantic dinners or luxury, but by shared exhaustion, mutual respect, and the unconditional love of a 6-year-old girl. Evelyn wasn't just being rescued, she was being reborn. She realized that the power she sought in the boardroom had been available all along in the quiet strength of this man and the innocence of his child. She saw her corporate self as a shield, but she saw Marcus as an anchor, immovable, dependable, and true. He had given her a place where her brilliance wasn't measured by her net worth, but by her kindness. If you believe that sometimes the safest place you can find is in the heart of a good person, click like and comment. I will choose kindness. The reprieve ended sharply. One morning, Evelyn opened her temporary burner email account to find an official message from the Carter Investments Board. The tone was professional, yet glacial. "If you fail to return to the CEO position within 48 hours, the board will convene to revoke your title and transfer all effective control. The vacuum you created is costing the firm millions." Marcus read the email over her shoulder, his face impassive, masking his inner turmoil. This was the moment of truth. He knew the weight of the sacrifice she was about to make. Evelyn looked at him, then at Ava, who was coloring innocently on the floor. The world's wealthiest woman was staring at the only life that mattered. She couldn't bear to leave them. The glittering office, the power, the money. It all felt cold and meaningless compared to the warmth of this cramped, secure apartment. She turned back to Marcus, her eyes shining with certainty. "I'm not going back to the office." So Marcus stepped closer, reaching out to gently cup her cheek, feeling the soft skin beneath his thumb. "Are you sure, Evelyn? You worked your whole life for that. You built an empire." Evelyn nodded fiercely, a wave of profound relief washing over her. Tears of absolute liberation finally streamed down her face. "I built an empire on sand. This," she gestured around the small room, "is built on rock. This is the only place I have ever felt loved. This is my home now. I choose peace over power. Marcus pulled her into a long, protective embrace. Then welcome home, Evelyn Hayes. Ava, sensing the profound shift, ran over and hugged both their legs tightly. So we're a family now, right? Evelyn and Marcus laughed through their tears. Yes, darling, they confirmed in unison. We are absolutely a family now. The circle of the story closed on a small, symbolic gesture. Evelyn took the faded black t-shirt, the one she wore when she first woke up in his life, and carefully hung it on the back of the bedroom door, not as a shirt, but as a token. Since that morning, she whispered to Marcus, leaning her head against his chest, my whole life really has changed. The stolen shirt, it was the first time I felt like a human being again. You are my freedom, Marcus. The three of them walked hand in hand toward the small kitchen table, ready for a humble breakfast, their lives forever intertwined by a twist of fate, a broken heel, and a single, profound act of kindness. If you believe stories of quiet strength, sacrifice, and the choice of love over power deserve to be told, leave a comment and subscribe. We tell the true stories that shouldn't be forgotten.